My name is Barbara Kent. I'm 39 years old, and my father uninvited me from Thanksgiving like it was nothing, so I canceled the heat I'd been quietly paying for and let them freeze. Literally. It was a Thursday afternoon in late October. I was curled up on my thrifted couch, flipping through a crumpled car magazine, letting my ancient space heater whine and click in the background. I'd just come off a double shift at the warehouse. My feet ached, my shoulders felt like they were glued to my ears, and my only plans were a microwave meal and a hot shower. Then Dad called. I figured it was the usual mom's sink is clogged again, or the garage door won't open. You know, the standard, "Hey Barb, could you just request?" But instead, his voice came flat and blunt. You're not coming to Thanksgiving this year." No greeting, no explanation, just those words, like he was casually canceling a haircut. I blinked. "What?" "It's better this way," he said, like it was a favor. "Janice is stressed, and we don't want to upset her." I sat up. The magazine slipped from my lap and fanned out across the floor. "Upset her how?" I asked. He sighed, annoyed I wasn't immediately compliant. "She's been on edge lately. Everything's delicate right now. You being there just adds tension." There it was. The golden child clause. Janice gets anxious and I get erased. I clenched my jaw. "So you're disinviting me? Because Janice might throw a fit." He had the nerve to chuckle. "It's just one day, Barbara. Don't make a big deal out of it." I stood up so fast my knees cracked. My boots hit the hardwood floor with a hollow thunk. "One day," I said slowly, the words catching like thorns. "And the $6,000 I spent keeping your house warm this year, is that also just one day?" He went quiet. "Oh, come on," he finally muttered. "Don't bring that into this." "You offered?" "Offered?" That word snapped something in me. 2 years ago, after Janice torched $20,000 of their savings on a luxury candle business that flopped in less than a month, my parents were buried in bills, so I stepped up, took over their heating bills, $500 a month, straight from my paycheck to the oil company, another $500 when the furnace failed last winter. They never asked directly. They just sighed a lot. Mom would say, "We're not sure we'll make it through December," with her voice trembling over a lukewarm cup of tea. So I offered. I didn't ask for anything in return, no thank you notes, no parade, but I also didn't expect to be cut from the guest list to keep things simple for Janice. I walked to my laptop, sat down, and opened the heating account. I had set it up under my name because, of course, Dad couldn't figure out all that online mess. There it was, $6,000 this year alone, another $400 the year before. I stared at the number for a long moment. Then I clicked cancel service. Effective November 1st, 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, just as the cold was moving in. Let Janice enjoy her stress-free holiday wrapped in 4 layers of sweaters. That night, I roasted a small chicken in my apartment. I seasoned it carefully. I poured myself a glass of grocery store wine and ate slowly, imagining them trying to cook with gloves on. The first text from Mom came a few days later. "Barbara, is the heating company behind on deliveries again? It's getting cold in here." I ignored it. 3 days later, a voicemail from Dad. "Barbara, call the oil company. Furnace won't kick in. Something's wrong." I played it on speaker while I swept my floor. Then Janice finally texted, "What did you do? It's freezing. Fix it." I smiled. I hadn't felt this warm in weeks. As the temperature dropped, their messages increased. My mom's texts got more frantic. My dad's voicemails turned from confused to sharp. Janice's were full-blown tantrums. "You're cruel, you're jealous, you're ruining everything." But I didn't reply. Instead, I went to work, came home, made stew, and listened to true crime podcasts while snow drifted against my window. My apartment wasn't much, a tiny one-bedroom with a leaky faucet and a radiator that coughed, but it was warm. It was mine. Thanksgiving came, a snowstorm rolled in, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. "Barbara, it's 40 degrees in here. We're wearing coats inside." "This is abusive. Call them now. Janice is crying. Mom can't sleep. Dad's sick." I sipped my tea, put on my favorite flannel, and set the table for one. Then the doorbell rang. It was my father, standing in the snow, red-faced and shaking, wrapped in a jacket that was clearly meant for fall, not a full-on nor'easter. I cracked the door. "You shut off our heat," he said flatly. "It's 30 degrees in there. Your mother is in 3 blankets. Janice left. What is wrong with you?" I leaned against the doorframe, letting the warmth of my apartment spill out into the frozen air behind me. You told me I wasn't family anymore, that I wasn't welcome, so I stopped doing family things like paying your bills. He stared at me, stunned. It was just one day, he said. I smiled, exactly, and I shut the door. It didn't take long for the silence to turn into a siege. The morning after Thanksgiving, I woke to 13 missed calls and 24 unread messages. Mom's texts had shifted from confusion to guilt-laced sermons. Janice's were a mix of accusations and self-pity. And Dad, he just left voicemails that were half threats, half whiny pleas. Barbara, this has gone too far. Your mother could get sick. We've always supported you. You're punishing us for something that isn't your business. The irony nearly knocked me off the couch. Supported me. The only thing they'd ever consistently offered me was silence when Janice lied, when they needed money, when I was left to clean up the pieces. My business, I was the one who'd paid their heating for 2 years straight. The only reason they hadn't frozen last winter was because I worked doubles through flu season and wired the money in secret. But suddenly, now that I wasn't an obedient ATM with a smile, it was my fault they were suffering. I turned off notification, no texts, no voicemails, no second guessing. Still, the days felt heavier. Work was quiet, even during rush hours. I stopped hanging around the break room. I wasn't in the mood to chat with coworkers who didn't know that I was being villainized for daring to say no. Even Brian, the only friend I trusted to vent to, seemed surprised when I told him how bad the backlash had gotten. They're acting like you lit the house on fire, he said one night over burgers, when all you did was stop pouring water into their sinking boat. I gave a dry laugh. They expected me to keep bailing forever. Every day, the texts got more desperate, then more manipulative. Janice's tone shifted quickly accusatory to pathetic to something more poisonous. You're abandoning the only family you have left. What kind of daughter does this to her parents? You'll regret this. Don't come crawling back when you're the one alone. Each one chipped at something inside me, not because they hurt, but because they were so predictable. It made me wonder how many years I'd spent bending to these little messages. The subtle digs, the guilt-laced silences, all the ways they trained me to keep giving and never ask for anything in return. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I started documenting. I printed out every bank transfer, every invoice I'd paid in their name. I pulled old emails and texts from Mom that said things like, "Can you just cover the oil this month? We'll pay you back." Promise. They never did. I printed screenshots of Janice bragging about her boutique online while I was paying her bills. It became almost meditative. For the first time, I was collecting receipts not just for taxes, but for truth. One afternoon, I sat at my tiny kitchen table, organizing everything into a binder, when a knock rattled my door. It was Mom. She looked smaller than usual, buried in a giant coat, eyes red, cheeks windburned. I didn't open the door. I spoke through the crack. "I'm not doing this, Mom. We just need to talk," she said, voice trembling. I kept my hand on the deadbolt. "You already talked. When you let Dad cut me out? When you let Janice run the show? That wasn't—" she started, but her voice cracked. "We didn't mean to hurt you. You just didn't care if you did," I said. Then I closed the door. She didn't knock again, just stood there for a while, then left. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry. Just hollow, like a balloon finally deflated after years of trying to hold its shape. That night, I started planning my vacation. I hadn't taken one in years, not since I started helping them. I booked a long weekend in the mountains. Nothing fancy, just a quiet cabin with a hot tub and no cell service. I told no one. Meanwhile, the cold was squeezing the life out of their house. I heard from Olivia, my cousin, and maybe the only sane one in the extended family, that the thermostat had dipped below 30 degrees inside. They're bundled up like it's the apocalypse, she told me over the phone, half amused, half horrified. Your mom tried to guilt-trip Aunt Carol into wiring them cash. Didn't work. I could hear the hesitation in her voice. She didn't agree with my approach, but she understood it. "Are you okay?" she finally asked. "I'm fine," I said, and I meant it. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't being smothered by the weight of everyone else's problems. I was sleeping better, eating better. Heck, I even joined a gym. And every time I glanced at my phone and saw no new messages from them, I felt lighter. I wasn't isolated. I was insulated. They were the ones unraveling because without my quiet sacrifices, their whole house of cards was finally collapsing. Let it fall. The first real crack came from Olivia. It was early December, just after a light snowfall. I was sipping coffee by the window, watching the world outside turn to quiet frost when my phone buzzed. Olivia's name lit up the screen. "You got a minute?" she asked. "Yeah, what's up?" She hesitated. "I wasn't going to say anything, but I think you need to know what Janice has been telling people." I didn't respond right away. Part of me wasn't surprised. Janice never met a lie she didn't like. "She's been saying you," Olivia sighed. "You offered to stop coming to family events, that it was your choice. She told people you refused to help with Thanksgiving, that you were bitter because she's finally turning her life around." I stared into my coffee, the steam curling up like smoke from a dying fire. "And the heating?" I asked. "She says you never paid a dime, that you only pretended to help but ghosted when bills came due." I didn't feel hurt. I felt cold. Not the kind of cold you get from winter air, but the kind that comes from realizing you were never just forgotten. You were rewritten. "She's turning the whole family against you," Olivia said gently. "Aunt Carol doesn't believe it. Neither does Uncle Vince. But people are talking." Of course they were. It wasn't enough for Janice to push me out. She had to burn what was left of my place in the family. "2. Thanks for telling me," I said. My voice came out even, too even, like a calm lake that's hiding something sharp underneath. Olivia sighed. "I hate this, but I'm with you. Okay, if you ever need anything, I might," I said slowly. "Actually, I have an idea." That night, I went to work. Not at the warehouse, not at the gym, but on my laptop. I opened the folder I'd started after Thanksgiving full of payment records, heating bills, email confirmations, but I added more this time. Screenshots from old group chats where Mom thanked me for sending money, texts from Janice herself asking me to just float this one or send a Venmo real quick, even selfies she'd posted from fancy wine bars while I was working overtime to keep their heat on. And then I remembered something Dad's old will. Back before all this started, he'd made me executor. Said I was responsible, that I'd know how to handle things. I didn't think much of it at the time. Just another burden dropped on my lap with a smile. But now it felt like a trap. I dug out the file. Sure enough, there it was. Dated, signed, notarized. If anything happened to him, I'd be the one managing the estate, handling the money, dividing the scraps. Not anymore. I scanned the document, added it to the pile, and wrote a formal resignation letter. I wasn't going to be their safety net in life or in death. The next day, I called a lawyer. He was sharp, efficient, and didn't flinch when I explained the situation. "You're doing the right thing," he said. "Families like this, they only learn through boundaries." I handed over the binder, the resignation, everything. "Can we also draft a letter to the utility company?" I asked. "Just to make it crystal clear I'm not responsible for their bills." He smiled. "Absolutely." It felt like armor. Like for the first time in years, I was putting up walls they couldn't knock down. The next week was quiet. Almost too quiet. No calls, no texts, just snow piling outside and the steady hum of my own heater. Until the voicemail, it was from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, this is Mark Jennings, school counselor at Hawthorne Elementary. I just wanted to reach out about your niece. Lila, we received your number from a school emergency form and well," I sat up straight. Lila Janice's daughter. I hadn't seen Lila in months. Sweet kid, big eyes, always a little nervous. Janice rarely mentioned her, except to complain. "We're concerned she's been coming to school in inappropriate clothing for the weather. She mentioned something about the heat being out at home." My stomach twisted. I called back immediately. Mark explained everything. Lila had shown up in thin leggings, no gloves, and a jacket that was clearly too small. When asked, she quietly admitted the house had no heat. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to be petty. I wanted revenge, but not on a child. Not on her. "I'm not her guardian," I said. "But I'll drop off a care package today." I spent the next hour packing a box. Thick winter coat, gloves, wool socks, a blanket, a lunchbox. I slipped in a note. "Stay warm, Lila. You are loved. Aunt Barbara." Then I called Olivia. "Need a favor," I said. "Can you drop this off at the school anonymously?" She didn't ask questions, just said yes. That night, I cried for the first time in months. Not for Janice, not for Dad, but for Lila. For every quiet kid stuck in the middle of someone else's failure. But the tears didn't weaken me. They cleared something out. The next morning, I opened a new email draft. To extended family. Subject. Some truths. With receipts. I attached a PDF. It included every penny I'd spent, every lie Janice had told, every bit of evidence they needed to understand who'd really kept the lights on. I didn't write a bitter message, just one line. You don't have to believe me, but now you can't say you didn't know. 3 hours after I sent the email, my phone exploded. Not texts, not calls, silence. It was the most deafening noise I'd ever heard. Then, slowly, one by one, the reactions started rolling in. Aunt Carol replied first, just 5 words I always knew. I'm sorry. Then Uncle Vince, thank you for sending this. You didn't deserve any of it. But not a word from Janice, not a single message from my parents. I wasn't surprised. They were scrambling. Olivia called that evening, breathless with gossip. You did it, didn't you? I did. I said, the weight finally starting to lift from my shoulders. They're in full-blown meltdown. She laughed. Janice tried spinning it, claimed you forged the emails. Aunt Liz dragged out her own screenshots. Turns out Janice begged her for money too. Claimed it was for Lila's health emergency. I didn't even flinch. Of course she lied to everyone. It was her favorite currency, sympathy. Well, what about my parents, I asked. Your dad's mad. Like red-faced, pacing, muttering kind of mad. Your mom just keeps repeating, she's tearing us apart. I let out a short breath through my nose. A laugh. Maybe. Or just disbelief. They're the ones who took me out of the picture. I said, yeah, Olivia replied, and now the picture's burning. That weekend, the fallout began in earnest. Janice got kicked out of her friend's apartment. Apparently she'd stiffed them on rent and trashed their guest room. I only knew because she posted a vague Instagram story with the caption, some people are so fake. I hope karma hits fast. She still didn't block me, still wanted me to see it. Meanwhile, the oil company finally confirmed what I already knew. My name had been removed from all accounts. My parents tried to reactivate the service in my name. Twice, they failed both times. By Monday, the temperature dropped again. A nasty cold front rolled in with black ice warnings and wind chills in the teens. I stayed warm. They didn't. On Wednesday, I got a knock at the door. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Dad? I opened the door halfway, just enough to see his red face and trembling lips. Barbara, he said, we need to talk. You mean now I'm allowed to show up? I asked, one brow raised. He winced, but didn't argue. It's cold. Yeah, I said, voice flat. Winter tends to do that. He glanced behind me, probably hoping for an invite. I didn't move. I know you're upset, he started, but we're still family. You don't abandon family. You did, I replied. When it suited you. When it kept Janice's fragile ego intact. She's going through a lot. So was I said. When I was working 60-hour weeks and wiring $500 a month into your heating account while you let her call me toxic behind my back. He flinched. I'm sorry, he said finally. But can't we start over? For your mother's sake? I crossed my arms. You mean the mother who sent Olivia a message last night saying I was emotionally unwell? That mother. He had no response. I didn't ask for thanks. I said, I asked for basic decency. You failed, and I'm not the cleanup crew anymore. Then I handed him a folder. Inside a formal cease and desist letter from my lawyer, detailing that any financial accounts, obligations, or records associated with me were officially voided. Legal, binding, non-negotiable. If you or Mom try to put me on anything again, I said, you'll hear from my attorney. He stared at the folder like it was radioactive. I never thought you'd turn your back on us, he muttered. No, I said, you just assumed I'd never stand up for myself. Then I shut the door. Not slammed, just closed. The silence on the other side was exquisite. By Friday, Janice finally cracked. She called me. 3 times. I didn't answer. Then came the text. I don't deserve this. I'm doing my best. I almost laughed. Then she sent another. You're destroying Mom. She's barely eating. She says you broke her heart. I typed a response, then deleted it. Because nothing I could say would make them see what they never wanted to see. They didn't want a daughter or a sister. They wanted a donor. But karma has perfect hearing. That night, Olivia texted me a photo. It was of Janice sitting in a laundromat, bundled in 3 coats, staring at her phone like the world had ended. She's staying at a pay-by-the-week motel now. Olivia wrote, no heat, no Wi-Fi. Mom's using space heaters and rationing hot water. Your dad tried to pawn his old tools. I stared at the photo for a long moment. Not out of joy, not out of pity, but out of relief, because I finally knew what peace looked like, the absence of their noise. A week later, I donated $100 anonymously to Lila's school lunch fund. That was it. No notes, no credit, just quiet care for the only innocent one in this mess. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the villain for walking away. I felt like someone who finally closed the book, and maybe, just maybe, started writing a new one. Story 2. My name's Andrew. I'm 34, a systems analyst who likes quiet mornings, black coffee, and, until recently, believed in family above all else. For a full year, I was my younger sister's safety net. Her name's Melissa, 29, impulsive, always chasing a big dream with zero plan, married to Connor, the king of vibes and unemployment. When their rent fell behind last year, I stepped in without hesitation. $1,500 a month, no contract, no drama, just a brother doing what he thought was right. I paid it quietly, on time, for 12 straight months. But it wasn't just the rent. I gave Melissa my credit card, no spending limit. I trusted her. She said it would just be for essentials. 1 week, she spent over $600 candles, takeout, random nonsense. I didn't say anything. I figured she was stressed. I wanted to help. Always did. And then came the moment I should have walked away. A fraud alert hit my phone. 2 personal loans taken out in my name. My social security number, my birthday. Hers were the hands behind the theft. When I called, she sobbed. Said it was a mistake. That she meant to ask first. That they were desperate. I believed her. Or maybe I wanted to. So I didn't go to the police. I just waited. Prayed she'd get it together. Spoiler, she didn't. Then, 6 months ago, Melissa told me they were finally tying the knot. Just need a little more help, she said. One last time. So I sent $8,000. No questions. No promissory note. Just hope. Now, fast forward to last month. My dad's 60th birthday. Big party. All the family's there. Melissa and Connor show up dressed like influencers. I figured I'd hear about the wedding. Maybe even be in the wedding party. I mean, I paid for it. Instead, I got this. I asked, so when's the big day? Melissa didn't blink. Oh, you're not invited. I laughed. Thought she was kidding. She wasn't. You don't belong there, she said. Like I was an ex, not her brother. Like I hadn't kept their lights on for a year. Then Uncle Jack chimed in from across the room. You'll ruin the party with your face. That line burned in my brain like a scar. I didn't yell, didn't cry. I just stood there, stunned, and walked out. That night, I started flipping switches, canceled the rent payments, killed the credit card, revoked access to every subscription and delivery service tied to my accounts. Hulu, Uber, Whole Foods all gone. I blocked their numbers. It wasn't revenge, it was clarity. 5 days later, the messages started. You misunderstood me. Please talk to me. I didn't mean it. They thought I'd do what I always did. Fold, fix it, come back. But they were wrong. Because this time I wasn't angry, I was done. And being done, it was the most peaceful feeling I'd had in years. After I blocked them, silence fell like fresh snow. Clean, cold, undisturbed. For the first time in years, Melissa's name wasn't lighting up my phone with drama, no late-night emergencies, no overdraft notifications, no emotional blackmail about tight spots, just quiet and peace. But they didn't expect that. Not the silence, not the boundary. Melissa's texts kept coming. New numbers, long pleading paragraphs. You're my brother. It wasn't personal. We just had limited space at the wedding. Limited space, I paid for the venue. You're being dramatic. You always use money to control people. That one stung, because I never once used it against her. I never asked for recognition. Never threw it in her face. I just gave and gave and gave. So I didn't reply. Instead, I watched as the consequences slowly rolled in. First, the groceries. She tried to swipe my card at Costco, probably restocking for another party, and it declined. She texted me in a panic. Card declined. Can you just fix it for now? I'll pay you back, I swear. I laughed out loud. With what exposure? Next, the rent. The landlord called me first time ever. They're late again. Can you cover just one more month? I told him no, politely but firmly. They'll need a new sponsor, I said. 2 weeks later, Melissa and Connor were out of the apartment. Moved in with our parents. I didn't hear it from her. I heard it from Mom. That's how fractured things had become. I thought maybe, just maybe, it would be her wake-up call. But Melissa didn't wake up. She doubled down, started posting vague subtweets on Instagram. Some people only help so they can feel powerful. Real success is cutting off toxic energy. Grateful for those who believe in me, not those who try to own me. No tags, no names, but everyone knew, and I didn't care. If anything, it was amusing. The effort she put into faking strength for social media was more than she ever put into getting her life together. Then came the wedding. No invitation, no updates, nothing. Until that night, I was home, halfway through leftover pizza, when my phone buzzed. A message from Uncle Jack. Against my better judgment, I opened it. It was a video. Melissa and Connor, at their reception, laughter, champagne. That smug, polished we made it glow. Melissa raised her glass and stared straight into the camera. See, we can do without him. Connor chuckled, Jack cheered, people clapped. I watched it twice, not from anger, but from clarity. She really thought that cutting me off meant she won. She had no idea. The following Thursday, she showed up. No warning, no apology, just a knock at my door like nothing happened. I checked the peephole. Melissa stood there in a hoodie, hair tied up, face hollowed out by stress. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me. She started talking before I even said a word. They'd been in a car accident, not hurt, but the car was totaled. No insurance payout, she'd downgraded the policy to save money. No transport, Connor missed 2 interviews, her temp jobs dried up. Our parents don't want to cover for us anymore, she said, as if it were a shocking betrayal. Dad told me to talk to you. Said you've helped us more than anyone. I stayed silent, let her sit in it. Then came the pitch. I know things got out of hand, but we're family. We've always had each other's backs. I asked, is that what you call what you said at the wedding? She blinked. I didn't let her play dumb. You looked into the camera and said, see, we can do without him. She looked at the floor. I didn't mean it like that. We were just trying to feel proud of ourselves. I shook my head. No, you were trying to erase me. After everything I did, you weren't celebrating, you were pretending none of it ever happened. Then, finally, she whispered, I'm sorry. I nodded. Thank you, but I don't help you anymore. Her face dropped. You can't treat someone like trash and then expect them to rescue you. The apology evaporated. Rage took its place. You're bitter. Holding a grudge. No, I said, I'm not bitter. I'm free. There's a difference. Then I turned and walked back inside. Closed the door. Didn't look back. After that last doorstep showdown, I expected silence. Instead, the desperation shifted tactics. New numbers, blocked numbers, anonymous DMs, each one sounding more panicked than the last. We're sorry, Andrew. Let's talk. You're taking this too far. Don't let money ruin our family. But it wasn't the money, it was the principle. So I ignored them. And that's when Melissa's final act of fiction began unraveling. See, while she had spent years spinning stories how I was a control freak, how I dangled help like a leash, I had receipts, literal ones, and now I stopped hiding them. I started slow, quietly. No public posts, no drama. Just a few select screenshots, text messages, emails, transaction logs, enough to plant seeds. I sent them to 3 people, 2 cousins and a close family friend, all people Melissa had misled with her half-truths. My message was simple. I never said anything because I hoped she'd grow up. I was wrong. That's it. No explanation needed. The reaction was swift. One cousin replied, Bro, she told everyone you cut her off for no reason, that you were mooching off her. I forwarded 6 pages of screenshots, rent transfers, card charges, loan approvals in my name. No commentary, just truth. Then I waited. It didn't take long. Melissa started calling people in a panic, crying, claiming I was spying on her, destroying her life, turning the family against her. A different cousin called me, asking, What the hell did you do? She's freaking out. I said, I stopped lying for her. And I wasn't done yet. I reached out to Melissa's old landlord, the one who once thought she was the responsible tenant. I sent him proof I had made every rent payment. Told him I'd like his records corrected. He apologized. Said he had no idea. Then came Connor's big break, or so he thought. He'd lined up an interview with a mid-sized logistics firm downtown. A solid job. A rare opportunity. I happened to know someone on the hiring team. We hadn't talked in years, but I reached out. I didn't sabotage him. I didn't lie. I simply told the truth. Connor used me as a financial crutch for over a year. Took loans he never paid back. Laughed about it afterward. Just be careful. That was enough. Connor didn't get the job. And I didn't gloat. Didn't respond to the furious voicemails that followed. They burned their bridge. I just stopped rebuilding it. That week, Melissa tried the nuclear option, mom and dad. She showed up crying. Said I was ruining her life. That I was holding on to old stuff and refusing to let her change. Mom called. Andrew, is this true? So I told her everything. The rent, the loans, the $8,000, the fraud, the birthday humiliation. There was a long pause. Then Mom sighed and said, well, I guess that's it. Even Dad, who rarely picks a side, had finally had enough. He told Melissa, until you learn to own your actions, don't come to your brother. Melissa didn't take it well. The next day, she posted a dramatic rant online. Some emotional prose about being abandoned by the people I trusted most and how pain teaches us who's really loyal. The comments were sympathetic, mostly from strangers who didn't know the story. But the ones who did, silent. That silence said everything. And the best part, I hadn't even shared the full truth yet. 3 weeks after the wedding video and the meltdown at my door, Melissa's social media went quiet. She didn't stop posting, oh no. She was still there, but something changed. Gone were the barbs about fake friends and toxic family. Gone were the carefully edited wedding photos with poetic captions about new beginnings. In their place were motivational quotes, sunset pictures, and staged candid selfies. But no tagged friends, no new comments from the usual cheerleaders. She was trying to save face, but her audience had left the building. I wasn't watching with satisfaction. I wasn't watching at all. Actually, others told me, friends, cousins, even a few of her former defenders. She's telling people you blacklisted her from jobs. She said you're emotionally abusive. She said you've always been jealous. Every time I heard a new lie, I just opened the folder on my desktop labeled truth. It held everything: texts, transfers, screenshots, receipts, not out of spite, out of memory. Out of the need to remember what real looks like when the gaslighting starts again. Because Melissa wasn't just delusional, she was strategic and desperate. Then came a text from Lauren, my cousin. She listed you as a reference again, a firm downtown. Unreal. She'd applied for a front desk position, still using my name to open doors. I called the hiring manager myself, told her politely that Melissa had used my identity to secure loans, that I'd paid her rent for a year, that she said to my face I wasn't welcome at her wedding after funding half of it. I don't want to interfere, I said, but if you're going to trust her, you deserve the full picture. The manager was kind, professional. Thank you for your honesty, she said. Melissa didn't get the job. Still, I didn't celebrate. I wasn't trying to destroy her. She was doing that all on her own. Weeks passed. I didn't hear from her. Then one day, Mom sent me a photo. Melissa and Connor sitting in her kitchen, plates half-eaten, neither speaking. Shadows under their eyes, no glow, no filters. My mom's caption was simple. This is what happens when the safety net disappears. Turns out Dad had asked them to start helping with groceries. Just groceries. Connor said they were between paychecks. Melissa said they needed time. Dad said, so do I. I'm retired. That was the end of that. They left a week later. Moved out of my parents' house. I don't know where they went. I didn't ask. Then came the last straw, Uncle Jack. He called out of the blue, using that fake peace tone toxic people love when they think you're about to forgive them. Andrew, buddy, let bygones be bygones. You've made your point. She's learned her lesson. Let's move forward. I didn't yell. I asked, do you remember what you said at Dad's party? He paused. You said, you're ruining the party with your face. Jack stuttered. Said it was a joke, that I took it wrong. And the rent I paid, the groceries, the $8,000, that wasn't a joke. That was real. I hung up. Didn't hear from him again. The final piece came unexpectedly. A video sent anonymously. Melissa on a couch. Filmed from the side. She didn't know she was being recorded. Her voice was tired. Her hoodie swallowed her frame. Someone asked off camera, how are things going? She laughed soft, bitter. I really thought he'd crack. He always folds. I thought cutting him out would scare him, that he'd come running to prove us wrong. Pause. I didn't think he'd actually disappear. And then, I think we actually need him now. I watched it twice. Not out of anger, out of confirmation. That was the truth, right there. It was never about me. It was about control. keeping me close just enough to lean on, never enough to appreciate. And finally, I was gone. It's been a year. Melissa and Connor vanished from my world. No more calls, no more requests, no more guilt. I moved to a new place. Small, quiet, mine. I started therapy, got my finances back in shape, took a solo trip to the coast, spent money on myself without guilt for the first time in years. The weirdest part? Peace feels awkward at first, like you've forgotten how to live without walking on eggshells. But it grows. I've reconnected with friends, started dating again. My circle is smaller, tighter, no freeloaders, no performers, just people who show up and stay. And Melissa. Last I heard, they broke up. He left. She's couch surfing again. But that's not my story anymore. And it never will be. If someone reads this years from now, maybe even a child of theirs trying to piece together the past, let me be clear. I didn't hate them. I gave more than I should have. I stayed longer than I should have. I only left when staying started to cost me who I was. If you ever find yourself in that position where love becomes obligation and kindness is taken as currency, you're allowed to walk away. You don't owe your destruction to people who build their lives on your collapse. You're allowed to build a door, close it, and never look back. I did. And I've never felt more alive. After the last call from Uncle Jack and the video I never wanted to see, I thought I'd feel relief. But what I actually felt was something much stranger: peace. Not because the chaos was over, but because I finally understood what peace really meant. It wasn't the absence of noise. It wasn't silence from them. It was the absence of their control over me. The day I blocked Melissa and Connor, I thought I was protecting my bank account. I was wrong. I was protecting my soul. That year of paying rent, groceries, streaming services, loans in my name, it was more than money. It was my time, my energy, my love given without return. It was invisible chains I'd been too blind to notice. Now I see clearly. I'm free. After everything fell apart, I stopped keeping tabs. I stopped wondering what they were up to. The updates came from family whispers, occasional text messages from cousins, vague social media sightings. Melissa was lost in her own spiral. Connor disappeared. Broken promises, broken hearts, but I didn't watch the wreckage. I stepped aside and let it be. My parents, they tried to stay neutral for a long time. My dad playing the both sides game, mom caught in the middle, but even they eventually had to admit the truth. The truth I'd been living with all along. That their children had grown up expecting me to be the backbone and then treating me like I was disposable. Sucked. With the money I stopped sending, I started rebuilding my own life. First, small things. Paid off debts I'd ignored for years. Upgraded my car, not a fancy model, but reliable. Booked a solo trip to Seattle, a city I'd always wanted to visit. Then bigger things. Moved into a new apartment across town. Nothing grand, just mine. Started investing, slowly, nothing wild, just smart moves. Started therapy, too, to untangle the knots I hadn't realized were still in me. Therapy taught me a lot about boundaries, how to hold them, how to respect them, how to heal from wounds no money could fix. I rebuilt friendships. Not many, but the right ones. People who saw me as a person, not a wallet or a backup plan. People who didn't expect me to bail them out of every mess. People who showed up because they wanted to, not because they needed to. And yes, I'm dating again, slowly, because now I want someone to grow with. Someone who doesn't expect me to fix their problems or carry their burdens. Someone who sees me, not just the guy who pays the bills. Melissa and Connor. I don't check up on them. I hear fragments here and there. Stories of struggle. Occasional sightings at the grocery store or local cafes. Rumors of a breakup. But I don't pry. It's their story now. I wish them well, truly. But from a distance, sometimes I wonder what it would be like if years from now, one of their kids stumbled across this story. Maybe scrolling Reddit late at night. Maybe seeing the names. Maybe recognizing the timelines. And maybe, just maybe, learning something from it. That you don't have to stay where you're not wanted. That love doesn't mean endless sacrifice. That sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is walk away. I want them to know this. I never hated them. I tried harder than I ever should have. I gave until it hurt, until it broke me. And when I finally said no, it wasn't spite, it was survival. They laughed at me, told me I didn't belong, tried to erase everything I did like it never mattered. So I left. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally realized I deserved better. Maybe they changed. Maybe they found their footing. Maybe they became people they could be proud of. If so, I'm happy. That would mean something stuck. But if not, if the patterns repeat, if the lies continue, if you feel like you're just another piece in someone else's story, remember this. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to start over. I did, and I've never looked back. Ani. Thank you for reading my story. Thank you for reminding me that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is close the door and build a life where you're truly welcome. Story 3. My name is Mason. I'm 38 years old, and I still remember the night my dad told me to get out of the house I'd been paying for all these years. It was supposed to be a family dinner, my niece's birthday. Nothing fancy, just the usual gathering in the same dining room where we'd shared countless meals since I was in 8th grade. Same chairs, the same dusty chandelier, the same awkward small talk that barely hid the tension under the surface. But that night something inside me broke. It started with a joke. Dad raised his glass and said, "Mason's lucky to have a place to live, especially with the economy like it is." The room erupted with laughter. Everyone but me. I stared down at my plate because the place Dad was talking about was the house I paid the mortgage on every month, without fail. Mom and Dad had stopped working years ago. Retired early, they called it. Even though neither had savings or a plan, they just assumed I'd carry the weight. And I did quietly. Without complaint, I paid the bills, cleared their debts, handed them an allowance each month just so they wouldn't feel guilty about their choices. I moved in a year after they did. I was job hopping, juggling 2 kids, no insurance, a car that was always on its last leg. I told myself I just needed a few months to get back on my feet. That was 14 months ago. By then, I was feeding 6 people, keeping the lights on, paying off credit cards that weren't mine, buying groceries I never ate. When I finally said, maybe someone else can start helping out a little, the room fell silent. Mom asked what I meant. Dad leaned back like a judge, waiting for a confession. I explained, calmly and honestly, that I'd been footing the bill quietly because I thought it was right, but I was tired. Then the silence stretched thick and heavy. After about 10 seconds, Dad stood up, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "You've given nothing to this family. Get out of my house." No yelling, no shouting, no anger, a cold, simple fact. I didn't ask if he meant it. I grabbed my jacket and walked out. Funny thing, I didn't even have a key anymore, not because they took it, because I never needed one. I paid for the roof, the walls, the heat, and the water, but the house, it had never been mine. 2 weeks passed. Not a word from anyone. I figured they were too proud to admit they needed me, so I let it go. Then one Thursday afternoon, my phone exploded. 30 messages from Dad, all variations of, "Why did you stop paying the mortgage?" The panic in his text was almost theatrical. He didn't apologize. He didn't ask where I was. He only wanted to know why the bank was calling him. I answered once, "You said I gave nothing to the family, now you can pay it yourself." No threats, no explanations. Just a mirror held up to the lie they'd been telling themselves for years. That night, I blocked his number. What happened next surprised me. The lies they told to cover up the stopped payments. The way they turned on each other. It was like watching a house of cards fall apart in slow motion. And I wasn't done. After sending that message, I sat on my mattress in my mostly empty apartment. No furniture, just a coffee maker, a laptop, and a few boxes. For the first time in years, I could breathe. No more surprise bills. No more "can you cover this one thing" texts. No more family gatherings I funded but wasn't invited to. They didn't know where I'd moved, and I liked it that way. 2 days after that night, I signed a lease on a place across town, in a neighborhood they never had a reason to visit. Half a year's rent paid up front. Utilities all in my name. Mail forwarded. A clean slate. 10 days of silence passed. No calls, no messages. Maybe they were proud enough to keep the quiet. I filled my days with work. Came home to a quiet apartment. Ate what I wanted. Slept when I wanted. I even started sleeping with my phone on Do Not Disturb, a new habit. Then one day, I got a text from Rachel. She lived a few doors down from my parents. We weren't close, but she'd always had a front row seat to their lives. She sent me a photo, an orange notice taped to their front door, a foreclosure warning. I guess they thought I was bluffing. A few days later, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. It was Alex, my younger brother. His voice was calm, rehearsed. "Hey Mason, things are a little crazy here. Dad's stressed. Mom's not feeling well. We didn't know the mortgage hadn't been paid. You know how things get lost in the shuffle? He asked if I could help for a few months. We're family, he said. I didn't call back. I didn't listen to the whole message. Days later, desperation crept in. Dad actually got through to my receptionist at work, asked to speak to me urgently. I had to explain to HR that no, I wasn't involved in any legal issues. No, my dad wouldn't show up at my office. That's when I knew he was unraveling. I unblocked Dad's number long enough to send one text. If you ever try to mess with my job again, I'll tell the internet everything. Every last detail. Then I blocked him again. But the messages kept coming from everywhere. Mom emailed me from an old AOL account she hadn't used in years. Uncle Jack texted, asking what was going on. Brother used his wife's phone. The story spread fast. Their version, anyway, they said I had a breakdown. They said I stole from them. They said I cut them off after everything they'd done for me. I was the one who'd kept the roof over their heads. The one who'd paid for their fridge and air conditioning. I didn't react, but I watched. Because the real fun began when I started unplugging things they didn't know I controlled. A Netflix account mine, canceled. Spotify mine, gone. Phones on the family plan, paid by me, canceled. I logged into their Ring doorbell one night and watched Dad realize the internet was dead. Every switch I flipped wasn't revenge. It was surgery, removing a part of my life infected for too long. They never realized how much of their lives I funded. Because to them, I was only valuable for what I provided. And when I stopped being useful, they tossed me out like garbage. So I showed them what nothing looked like, and that was just the beginning. The moment I blocked Dad's number, it felt like a door slammed shut on a chapter of my life that had been draining me dry, but I quickly learned that cutting off contact wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Almost overnight, the fallout began. Texts, emails, calls, they all came from different directions, different voices. Mom from her dusty AOL account, Dad from burner phones. Even Uncle Jack stepping in like some self-appointed family mediator. And then there was Alex, my brother, trying everything from guilt trips to desperate pleas, but none of it worked. I was done. They started spinning stories, trying to rewrite history before anyone else heard my side. I heard whispers that I had a breakdown, that I had stolen from the family, that I was cold-hearted and ungrateful, all while they'd been living off the money I quietly sent month after month. I wasn't just paying the mortgage, I was holding together a family that never thanked me. The lies spread fast. People I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly reached out, their voices full of doubt and confusion. Is it true you cut them off? Are you really the bad guy? I didn't respond. Instead, I watched the slow collapse of the house I'd built for them literally and figuratively. Because I wasn't done pulling strings behind the scenes, I started canceling services they still thought I was paying for. Netflix gone. Spotify canceled. Cell phone plans under my name terminated. Even the internet, I cut it off without warning. I logged into their Ring camera one night just to see their reaction. Dad pacing the living room, frantic. Mom wiping tears on her sleeve. The lights flickering and then going dark. It felt surgical, like cutting out the cancer I'd been feeding for years. They never knew how much I was funding their lives because to them, my value was only what I could provide. When I stopped providing, I became invisible. That invisibility was the hardest truth to swallow, but it was also the moment I started reclaiming my life. At the same time, the family began turning on each other. I started getting messages from relatives I barely knew. A cousin in Nevada, an old high school friend, even my godmother, all asking the same question in different words. What's really going on with your family? It was clear Dad had gone into full damage control mode, painting me as the villain who abandoned them in their hour of need. He told anyone who'd listen that I had refused to help, that I had thrown away the family bond over money, and that I was some wealthy tech guy who'd gotten too big for his britches. They presented themselves as poor, helpless retirees left to suffer by a heartless son. And some people believed it. That's how good they were at playing the long game, at spinning the story to make themselves victims. But I wasn't going to let that lie stand. So I told the truth. I created a Reddit account under a throwaway name and posted a detailed confession. No names, no rage, just facts. How I had paid their mortgage and debts for over 3 years. How they retired early with no savings or plan because they expected me to cover everything. How I finally reached my limit and was kicked out of the house I was paying for. The post exploded. Within 12 hours, it had over 20,000 upvotes. Comments poured in, stories from strangers who'd lived the same kind of family nightmare. Expressions of shock, sympathy, and righteous anger at people who use blood ties to exploit and manipulate. I didn't have to say who it was about. People knew. The post went viral on TikTok, shared by influencers with millions of followers, narrated with dramatic music. It wasn't planned, but it felt like justice. Suddenly, I was hearing from family members who had been silent for years, some deeply sorry, others shocked at what they never knew. One cousin even offered to help me move if I needed space. I didn't reply, I just saved the messages. And then Dad called again from a burner phone this time. I answered once, "Think you're smart. Putting our business online," he sneered. "No," I said calmly, "I'm being honest. You ruined my reputation first. Now I'm just setting the record straight." He hung up. That morning, I posted an update. More details. More receipts. More screenshots. No names, just truth. The comments section blew up again. People started digging. They found public records, tax lines, a foreclosure filing, and then it hit me. The house was on the market. My parents were trying to sell the house I'd been paying for, to cover their debts, to cash out before the bank took everything, and I wasn't going to let them profit from their lies. I called the real estate agent an acquaintance from their church, posed as a potential buyer, asked innocent questions, then casually dropped this bomb. "Are you aware this property is in foreclosure?" There was silence on the other end. "Who are you? Check the title." And then the line went dead. Next, I called the bank. I calmly told them I had documentation proving I'd made all payments for the past 3 years. I was ready to provide proof. The bank immediately flagged the listing. Frozen. No sale. Later, I heard Dad went ballistic, yelled at the realtor, stormed the bank, claimed I was lying, forging payments, and dragging the family name through the mud. The branch manager, someone I'd known when I set up automatic payments, shut him down cold. "You don't want to push this," he warned. Meanwhile, Alex tried a different tactic. Sent a long message, dripping with guilt. Said Dad was drinking again. Said Mom hadn't left her room in days. Said the kids were scared. Said I was taking things too far. I listened to his voicemail again, and then deleted it without a word. Utilities started shutting off. Water, gas, trash pickup, internet already dead. The house was decaying, inside and out. Neighbors whispered. The once perfect Anderson house was now a local curiosity. My parents, who thrived on curated appearances, began dodging neighbors instead of greeting them. One night, I answered a call from a blocked number. It was Mom. No screaming, no tears, just cold. "What do you want?" I laughed quietly. "You want to know. I want to thank you. Years ago, I wanted respect, recognition, an acknowledgement that I kept them afloat when no one else would. Now, I wanted nothing. Silence." She said, "You're ruining this family." "No," I said, "I'm just not letting you ruin me anymore." Then I hung up. They never called back. But the house wasn't the only thing they tried to steal. After foreclosure was set in motion, they turned their eyes to my car. Still parked in their driveway. Still registered to me. Still insured by me. I got a blurry photo from Rachel, 2 men in polos inspecting it. I called the police. 20 minutes later, Dad left me a voicemail. "You want to play games, fine, but don't leave your junk on my property." I filed a police report. The next day, with a tow truck and a police officer, I reclaimed what was mine. Mom watched silently from the screen door. Dad was out. Alex tried to act casual. Said things got out of hand. Said he was caught in the middle. I didn't respond. I signed the papers and left. That night, I posted my final Reddit update. The full timeline, every receipt, every transfer, every text, even the part about the car. No rant, no gloat, just truth. The post went viral again. Blogs picked it up. TikTok spread it. People shared it as a cautionary tale. How golden families rot when money replaces love. When obligation replaces gratitude. I never said it was me. I didn't have to. The people who mattered knew. The house was repossessed. No sale, no profit. Just an empty shell on a cul-de-sac. I didn't celebrate. I just watched the listing vanish and went back to work. I started sleeping better, eating better, bought a couch, got a cat, took a short trip. For the first time in years, I didn't worry about someone calling me to bail them out. The biggest change, I started telling the truth. And when people asked about my family, I didn't sugarcoat it. I told them how I paid for everything, how they kicked me out, how I let it all burn. And you know what? Surprisingly, people understood. Many nodded. Said, "Yeah, I get it." The best part, they still think I'll come back someday. And they have no idea I already did. Quietly. just to make sure the damage landed where it was supposed to. The house is stripped and cold now. The last time I drove by, I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just distance. Like watching the set of an old movie I once starred in. Something I outgrew, survived, and now watch from afar. A week later, the bank emailed me. Foreclosure complete. Thanked me for cooperation. I deleted it after reading twice. That was the last tie to that chapter. I don't know what became of my parents. Alex moved in with his wife's family. Said I blindsided everyone. Called me a traitor. But none of it mattered. That voicemail asking for just a few more months is filed away as a reminder. Mom and Dad ended up in a duplex 40 minutes away. Mom's car was sold. Dad's truck towed. No more Friday dinners. No more birthday speeches. No more fake smiles. Everything disappeared the day I stopped funding them. Through a mutual connection, I heard Dad told people I'd gone crazy. That I let money poison me. Left out the part where he kicked me out at dinner. Left out the part where I paid his bills while he golfed 4 times a week. The beautiful thing, people didn't buy it. Some even apologized to me. They didn't know the whole story. And that felt weird. Not good. Just weird. Because for so long, I thought no one would ever believe me. Then strangers on the internet and old friends said, "You did the right thing." And they were right. I didn't ruin my family. I held it together with duct tape and blind loyalty until the people I was holding up told me I didn't matter. So I left. When they came for me, I didn't crumble. I exposed the truth. Now I wake up alone, but free. And that's worth more than anything they ever gave me. After the foreclosure was finalized and the house was gone, I expected some relief, a chance to breathe. But the silence didn't last long. The fallout spread in waves, hitting every corner of my life. My phone kept buzzing with messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Some were friends, others were people I hadn't spoken to in years. All with the same question, "Are you okay? What's really going on?" For once, I didn't have to explain. The truth was out there, raw and unfiltered. The Reddit posts, the viral videos, the blog stories, they'd reached far beyond what I'd imagined. It was surreal to see strangers relate to my story, to tell their own tales of toxic families and hidden abuse. I wasn't alone. But family was a different story. I heard through the grapevine that Melissa, my sister, was furious. She'd lost the rent money I'd been sending for over a year, the loans she'd taken in my name, and now her social life was collapsing. She started posting vague, bitter messages on social media, blaming leeches and toxic ties. Everyone knew it was about me. Her friends slowly stopped answering her calls. The followers on her Instagram, once in the thousands, dwindled. Behind the scenes, I learned she and her husband Connor were barely scraping by. No car, no job, no safety net. My parents, once so proud, were forced into a small duplex far from the neighborhood they'd bragged about. Their social calendar was empty, their pride crushed. I wasn't heartless. I never wished them harm, but I wasn't going to let them drag me down anymore. Melissa eventually showed up at my doorstep, looking exhausted and broken. No grand apologies, no promises, just raw desperation. She told me they'd been in a car accident days after their wedding. The car was totaled, no insurance payout. Connor had missed job interviews, temp gigs dried up. My parents refused to help anymore. Dad even told her bluntly, "Talk to your brother." There she was, asking for help again. I didn't say a word. I let her sit in silence. After a few uncomfortable minutes, she tried to say, "We're family. We've always had each other's backs." I asked, "Is that what you call what you said at your wedding?" She blinked. I reminded her of the video I'd seen, the one where she raised a glass and said, "See, we can do without him." She looked down like a scolded child and whispered, "I didn't mean it that way." I told her no. She wasn't trying to be proud. She was pretending none of it happened. I told her I was done helping. She lost the right when she treated me like garbage. Her face twisted into anger. Called me bitter. Said I was holding a grudge. I said, "I'm not angry. I'm free." Then I shut the door and didn't look back. After that, the texts slowed but never stopped completely. New numbers, new voices. Connor's friends, maybe fake accounts. All begging, pleading, trying to soften me up. I ignored them all. I wasn't punishing them. I was simply done being their safety net. Then came the hard part, exposing the truth. Melissa had built a network of family, friends, and acquaintances who all believed her side, that I was controlling, abusive, overbearing. So I started quietly sharing evidence. Screenshots of her begging for rent money. Photos of deliveries she ordered on my credit card. emails confirming the loans she took in my name, receipts for the $8,000 I wired her. I wasn't being petty. I was building a wall of truth. One by one, the lies began to crumble. I sent a few screenshots to cousins and family friends, people Melissa had spun stories to. I simply said, "For the record, I wasn't silent because I didn't care. I hoped she'd grow up. Guess I was wrong." The message spread fast. I heard back from a cousin, "Bro, she told everyone you took her money and that she helped you when you were broke." I replied with 6 pages of her own texts. No explanations needed. Melissa started freaking out, calling people, claiming I was spying on her, ruining her life. Her desperation was palpable. A cousin called me, "She's losing it. What did you do?" I told the truth. And I wasn't done yet. I even contacted her old landlord, sent proof I was the one paying rent. The landlord apologized for the confusion and updated his records. It felt good to correct the record. Connor finally got a job interview. I knew someone at the company, an old school friend. I warned him to be cautious. Told him Connor had borrowed thousands and never paid back. I didn't say don't hire him. I said, know what you're getting into. Connor didn't get the job. I didn't gloat. Didn't reply to the angry voicemail he left. Desperate, Melissa showed up at my parents' house, in tears, claiming I was destroying her life, that she'd learned her lesson. Mom called me. I told her everything, the loans, the lies, the wedding video. Mom sighed, said, "Well, I guess that's it." Even Dad told her to stop contacting me until she took responsibility. Melissa didn't take it well. She posted a long rant online, saying she'd been abandoned, betrayed by the people she trusted most. Her followers flooded her with sympathy, but those who knew the truth, silence, and that silence spoke louder than any apology. By week 3 after the wedding, Melissa's social media was a ghost town. Posts filled with vague quotes about growth and cutting toxic ties. No new friends tagged. No photos with family. Her online world was empty, but behind the screen, she was crumbling. She just didn't know how to stop pretending. I didn't hear from her directly anymore. She gave up texting me, but I heard through cousins and friends, she claimed I was blacklisting her from jobs. I asked if she mentioned the loans, the rent, or the money I sent. No, just that I was out to get her. The victim card was still her favorite. Some family friends reached out, curious. One said, "I always wondered how they lived like that. Fancy dinners, takeout, streaming everything." She told everyone they were saving money. Another said, "I thought you and Melissa were close. She says you cut her off for no reason." I didn't rant or explain. I sent them receipts, wire transfers, bank alerts, her own messages. I let her words bury her. Mom sent me a photo of the kitchen. Melissa and Connor sitting at the table, silent, empty plates, faces like strangers. Mom wrote, "This is what happens when the safety net disappears." She said they'd been fighting for days. Connor blamed Melissa. Melissa blamed Connor. Neither had a job. They were selling what little they had left. Uncle Jack called. I let it go to voicemail. His message was fake peace talk. Time to let bygones be bygones. Melissa's learned her lesson. Let's all move on. I called him back once, asked if he remembered what he said at Dad's birthday. "You're ruining the party with your face." He mumbled a weak apology. I told him, "The rent I paid wasn't a joke either. Not one thank you. Not once." Then came the moment that told me everything. A video sent anonymously. Melissa on a couch, unaware she was being filmed, eyes red, worn out. She laughed bitterly, said, "I thought he'd crack. I thought cutting him out would make him run back." Pause. "I think we actually need him now." That was the final nail. In that moment, I saw the truth. It was never about love. Never about family. It was about control. About knowing I'd always bail them out. But I wasn't holding the shovel anymore. They had to climb out alone. A lot has changed since I told Melissa no. People think those moments are loud and dramatic. Mine was quiet. A door closing softly while she stood outside, asking for the same old favors. That silence hit harder than any shout. That was almost a year ago. Melissa and Connor stayed with my parents until they wore out their welcome. Dad finally demanded they start contributing. They argued, said they were looking for work. Dad said, "So am I and I'm retired." That was the end of it. They moved out. Where? I don't know. I didn't ask. What I do know, for the first time, they had to face reality. No safety net. No just cover this for now texts. No guilt trips. No family ties to exploit. And that's when it hit them. They didn't just lose my money. They lost me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't carrying the weight. It was gone. replaced with peace. With the money I wasn't sending, I started focusing on myself. Paid off debts, upgraded my car, booked a weekend trip just because I could. I bought a better apartment. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Quiet neighbors, big windows, a clean slate. I started investing. Nothing crazy, just smart. I even started therapy to unravel the years of invisible burden I'd carried. Most people don't talk about what it feels like to no longer be needed. But let me tell you, it's freedom, especially when the need was never about love, just convenience. I rebuilt my friendships, spent time with people who saw me as a person, not a bank account or a backup plan. And yes, I'm dating again. Slowly, not looking for someone to save me, just someone to grow with. Melissa and Connor. I don't keep tabs. I hear snippets here and there. A cousin mentions them working at a grocery store. Someone said they might have split. I don't check. That's their story now. Sometimes I wonder what the future holds. If one day their kids stumble across this story, maybe it'll help them understand. To anyone reading who feels trapped, used, or unseen, you're allowed to walk away. So you're allowed to say no. You're allowed to start over. I did, and I never looked back. The day I finally closed that chapter for good felt less like a victory and more like a release. I didn't throw a party or post a victory speech online. I simply woke up, took a deep breath, and started living for me. No more calls from strangers pretending to be family. No more messages begging for money or forgiveness. No more feeling like I was the only one holding everything together while everyone else tore it apart. For the first time in years, my mornings were quiet, my evenings peaceful. The weight that had pressed down on me for so long finally lifted. I threw myself into rebuilding everything I'd lost along the way. Small things at first. I bought a couch, something comfortable, my own choice, not a hand-me-down or a stopgap. I got a cat because I wanted something that depended on me, but on my terms. I decorated my apartment the way I wanted: bright colors, plants everywhere, cozy corners. Therapy became a weekly routine. I'd never thought much of it before, but unpacking years of invisible labor and unspoken resentment was harder than I expected. There were days I cried in those sessions, not from pain, but relief. Relief that I wasn't crazy for feeling used. Relief that I was finally putting myself first. Work was a refuge and a challenge. I started taking on projects I cared about, refusing anything that felt like a burden or a chore. I got a promotion. Not because I had to prove anything to my family, but because I finally believed I deserved it. Friends came back too. People who had been pushed away or ignored because I was always busy fixing things. They saw the new me, a man no longer defined by family drama, but by his own strength. Dating was slow, awkward, and often hilarious. After years of putting others first, learning to trust and open up felt foreign. But it was also exciting. I wasn't looking for someone to save me anymore. I wanted a partner. Someone who saw me as I saw myself now, whole, resilient, ready, family. That word used to sting like a slap in the face. Now it felt complicated but peaceful. I had chosen my family. My wife, my friends, my cat. People who showed up. Who didn't treat me like a bank or a punching bag. Melissa and Connor's lives moved on without me. I heard whispers, job losses, breakups, struggles. But I didn't watch. I didn't gloat. That chapter was theirs, not mine. I kept the door closed, but the walls I built were strong, not cold. I wasn't bitter. I was healed. One quiet afternoon, I received an unexpected message. It was from an old cousin, someone I barely spoke to before. "I'm sorry," she wrote. "I didn't see it. I didn't know." No excuses, no drama, just a simple apology. I didn't reply immediately. I sat with it for a while. Finally, I wrote back, "Thank you. That means more than you know." That was the start of rebuilding some bridges, not all, but some. I realized forgiveness wasn't about forgetting. It was about freeing myself from the past. I still have scars, and some days are harder than others. But those moments don't define me. What defines me is standing up, walking away, and building something new. I learned to celebrate the small wins. A peaceful weekend morning, a deep conversation with a friend, a quiet night with my cat curled beside me. I'm still learning, still growing, still healing, but most importantly, I'm living on my own terms. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to remember, you don't owe anyone your peace. You don't owe your energy to those who don't value it. You don't have to carry the weight of others' choices. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away. And that's exactly what I did. Thank you for reading my story, for listening, for understanding, If you're struggling with your own family battles, remember, you're not alone. You deserve respect. You deserve happiness. And you have the power to choose who stays in your life. I found mine by stepping out of the shadow and into the light, and I hope you find yours too. If you want to hear more or just need someone to listen, I'm here.